So then I got my master's degree. So 85 to 87, worked on my master's degree, and then I spent about 5 years just doing clinical social work, and just in the trenches, talking to people, mental health issues, all of the time. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. This is difficult. This is challenging. I think when I first started, it's really exciting. As a social worker or counselor, you're the keeper of secrets. People tell you things that they've never told anyone else. That's sort of it's an honor, but it's also a responsibility. And it's hard. Boy, you're shouldering all of this stuff. And after about 5 years, but I decided to apply to a doctoral program. And so I applied at the University of Utah, and I got a letter back from the head of the doctoral program, said, thanks for your application. We looked at your GRE scores. They were pretty low. So we'd consider you as an alternate, but we're not going to accept you. And I sent him back a note, and I said, I want you to know I'm very serious about this. Is there anything that I could do to show how serious? And he says, yeah, write me a paper. I think a lot of people would have blown that up, but I wrote him a paper. It was on, depression and cognitive therapy, and took it seriously.
That strikes me right there. That is a I will not quit attitude, a resilient attitude that I don't know. I mean, in sports, I think you did have it. You were state champion.
No, I was not state champion.
Okay, but you were one of the best swimmers in Utah.
Yeah, I would be top 10.
I'll just mention the time when there was a swimming competition, and actually you tell about that. You tell this is one of my favorite stories.
No, I think it was a dual meet. I'm swimming the 500 free, which is 20 laps of the pool. I get up on the blocks, and one of the other swimmers from another school gets up and asks me my time. And I just said something like, I haven't swam it much this year. I'm not really sure. So he turns to one of his friends and he goes, I got this guy beat. And one of my friends on the swim team walks up to him and says, do you know who that is? And so this is someone I've never met, but I'm top 10 and my times are listed there. And so he looks at my friend and he goes, is that Blair? And it was like, wow, people that I've never met have heard of me. And, my friend goes, yeah. And it's like, oh, wow. So that was, just kind of a cool thing that you're at least in top 10. People have read about you or heard about you. And that was, this is a dual meet.
To get in top 10, I'm looking at, we grew up together. So I remember little accidents you had when you were a child and, falling down the stairs and stuff like that. But somewhere you got an absolute determination that you were not going to be defeated. And whether that was early in your swimming career or if that came after the accident, it was there when you... It was
always competitive.
But it's kind of the I will not be beat then in getting admitted to the University of Utah. That really shows that you may think you're not going to admit me, but I'm taking this seriously.
Well, and part of it was I don't do well on big exams like the GRE.
I've never taken the GRE. I would do terribly.
And so it's like, man, I busted my butt studying for that. I did not do well. I know I don't have these scores, but I can do this other stuff. So it was sort of like, if I can't get in the front door, can I get in a window? Can I do something else? What can I do? And so
resilient behavior.
And so I gave him that paper, and he sent me back a note and said, "You're accepted."
Beautiful. And then, what did you study that made a difference in the rest of your life? Because this is what you're about. How old are you at this point? Mid-30s?
Oh. So I started my doctoral program in 92. So born in 58. Yeah, I'm probably. And so I think I'm just married too.
Mm-hmm.
So this was 92. I got married December 14th, 1990. So this isn't really that long after I've been married. And now dating, I think dating was at least a little bit of a challenge. And that was before I'd hurt my leg. I'm trying to think of how many serious girlfriends I had. I don't know about how serious I was.
Yeah,
but,
I wouldn't
you know,
call
I
any
had-
of them serious, but
But I dated some girls, and I think I was viewed differently. I didn't limp. I didn't have any of that. And then once the accident happened, I'm sort of at a lower category. And there's some girls that don't want to go out with me, and there are other girls that sort of could look past that. But understand something here. Part of it is my own prejudice. I would not have seriously dated a girl who limped, who had a physical disability, because sports was very important to me. So now I'm in this position that I'm saying, I don't think I would have done it. And so part of that is, how do I overcome my own prejudice against people with disabilities now that I have that? So there's some girls that wouldn't want to date me. There are other girls that it wasn't that big of a deal. So I dated some, but it was a challenge, I think, and part of it was my own prejudice. Am I worthy, or so even with my wife Christy, I think the first year we were married, I was still somewhat self-conscious, and talked to her once and just said, I'll never be able to walk straight. And she looked at me and she said, I don't see that, which was very helpful to me. So sort of through her eyes, I was whole, and no one mattered more than her. So if she could see me as whole, it didn't matter how other people would see me. And I think that was helpful for me to begin to see myself as whole when someone else could see me that way.
beautiful, beautiful. And so in your PhD program, your focus. Well, I remember you doing the Cambodian
The
researching.
Cambodian data, I'd had one of my professors who was doing this study. I think Shirley McSherry, if I remember, she had been doing this study and got cancer. And it was terminal cancer. She, was saying, okay, before I die, I've got to do this. And so she had done quite a bit. And so had the data, and this was fabulous data. Just great research methods, great questions, really well done. And she was involved with a group who were some of the most knowledgeable people on Cambodian refugees. So she died, and then Bill Farley, who became the chair of my dissertation, talked to me one time and said, hey, I have this data set. You may want to look at that. And so I looked at that data set, and it was an incredible data set. And I didn't know much about Cambodian refugees, but began to read about it and what they'd been through with the Khmer Rouge. And I think I had, maybe it was a Vietnamese student who helped me a little bit. And part of what he said to me is, the Cambodians don't see PTSD the way that you do. To put that label on them, they would be viewed as crazy, that they would label it very differently. So these Western labels that you put on really wouldn't make sense.
That is fascinating. Yeah, and that's actually a really important thing.
Oh, it is important because in Cambodia, if you're viewed as crazy, then your children are sort of not marriageable. So these people who had been through the Khmer Rouge, which was just this horrible genocide, that really, I think, in my research, it was saying they had the highest rates of PTSD of any population. No one could match those. The only ones that even close were World War II POWs. So these are people that now they've been resettled in the U.S., but they have these horrendous symptoms, but they're afraid to go to a mental health professional that they'll be labeled as crazy, and then their kids won't be able to marry.
Wow. Wow.
So what they end up doing is showing up at the doctor's office. So these are psychological symptoms, but but because of the culture, they can't manifest that
Wow.
way. So
Wow.
they'll manifest physically,
Yeah.
and show up there. Competent places would do more outreach programs, would normalize some of these symptoms. Anyone who's been through
Yeah.
this kind of stuff would have flashbacks. So normalizing rather than, oh yeah, you have PTSD, you have this, that just say anyone who would live through this would have these types of symptoms.
I'm just thinking of human dignity again. With we have a book called "To Destroy You Is No Loss," written by a Cambodian woman about what she went through during the Khmer Rouge, and that the complete the ability to not view humanity as human, to butcher men, women, and children, entire families. So you,
and sometimes in front of the parents.
yeah, I think that was one of the tactics.
Yeah, it was beyond. Just as I was reading about it, it was.
Yeah,
I would just cry. I just remember thinking, really, how can people get this low to do
Yeah.
such inhumane things to each other? So I think it's the level of Auschwitz, that level of suffering that I've never experienced personally, but just reading about it and doing this research, you walk along a side of it, and that's painful to say.
Yeah.
Wow, how could anyone endure this level of suffering? One of the things I was reading, communism, fascism, the Khmer Rouge, they offer a panacea of heaven, but it really just turns out to be hell.